Hello, so this is a video I actually never planned to film. But here it is, okay? People keep asking me this question all the time. How do you do magic when Bible clearly forbids magic? You fucking son of Satan, burn in hell. How can you use the divine names and do magic? And you talk about divine names all the time. It's evil God. He forbids magic. You gonna die. You gonna burn in hell. Okay. We have to define what magic is first. Before I keep talking, we have to define what magic is. The word magic, as we understand it in the West, doesn't mean anything. It covers so many different topics and things that it literally has no meaning. Word magic in the West literally means whatever church disagrees with at that particular point in time when they use the word magic. In the Middle Ages, it was completely normal to give candle offerings to statues of saints and light incense and pray to saints for shit. Now, in Protestant America, that's witchcraft! Burn them all! Okay? Word magic in the West doesn't define anything, doesn't mean anything, and it's so broad that basically everyone can be accused of witchcraft. And this is why Christian writers, especially in Protestant West, had so many witchcraft trials, because word witchcraft covered so much shit that they themselves forgot what the fuck it is, and they accused of witchcraft whoever they didn't like. What you have to understand is that word witchcraft and sorcery and magic in Western Europe can mean absolutely anything depending on who you ask. For a Catholic, praying to saints and lighting a candle is prayer, but to Protestant it is witchcraft. To Orthodox Christian, praying to body of a dead saint is prayer. To Protestant it is witchcraft. Okay? Witchcraft means whatever your particular church denomination dislikes. It has no meaning. It's an empty moniker for the things they don't fucking like. Just like word Nazi today, or right-wing extremist today. It doesn't mean anything. It can mean absolutely everything. It simply means that whoever calls you a witch or a witchcraft doesn't like what you are doing. They don't necessarily understand what you are doing, they just don't like it. Now, Old Testament approves certain practices and he bans certain practices of occult. Not all occultism is forbidden. And Jewish occultism is one of the oldest and the most powerful occult traditions in the world. It is one of the strongest magics in the world. Even people who are not Jewish apply Jewish magic because of how good it is. The entire Golden Dawn shit is a watered down version of Jewish occultism. The entire Golden Dawn. Okay? There is not a single piece of Golden Dawn literature which doesn't, in one way or the other, plagiarize what the Jews wrote. Usually in a bad way. So, in Jewish tradition, there are three things which are absolutely forbidden in magic. One is idolatry. Another one is divination. And the last one, which is forbidden, is baneful magic without God's authority. Okay, so those three things are exclusively forbidden, and they cover a lot of things, but I'm gonna define what's forbidden. Okay, so somebody quoted to me, Dimitri, you have familiar spirits, therefore you should be killed by the Old Testament because you have familiars. Well, not exactly. You see, one of the greatest Talmudic writers, Amarmar, the sage, was practicing magic. There is an infamous legend where Amarmar the sage bound Agrad Bat Malat to attack Persian official in order to release the Jews from captivity. Okay. Nobody accuses Amarmar of witchcraft. Bunch of writers agree that what Amarmar did is allowed by the Old Testament. And this is a Talmudic writing. This is the part of the Talmud which no Jewish rabbi denies. Okay? There is a bunch of Talmudic instances of rabbis using magic to help other Jews. Nobody judges them for it. So, if rabbis can use magic to help the Jews, what actually is forbidden in the Old Testament? What is forbidden? Why were people killed? If rabbis can use magic, what were people killed for? Okay, so in order for me to explain what I am talking about, I need to explain the concept of idolatry first. Because idolatry is the greatest sin according to the Torah. It's violation of the first commandment. But idolatry needs to be explained first. What Torah forbids in first commandment? So, the essence of the Old Testament is that there is only one God. He has no partners, and he is not divided in aspects. He is only one. Nothing and no one is equal to him. There is only one universal force, and there is no equal to that force. Okay? Any veneration of anything else as divine violates the first commandment. And it makes whatever you do forbidden. So, what is forbidden in the Old Testament is worshipping familiar spirits. If you call those same familiars using the power of the divine names of God, it is completely permissible. Because then you are not worshipping a familiar. You are making it appear by the power of the divine names. That is fine. Nobody killed Amarmar for summoning Agrad by the power of the divine names. He was actually celebrated for it. For binding Agrad and making her do something to help Jews. Nobody killed the Talmudic sage for summoning Agrad Bat Malat. Ever. He was completely fine. He was recorded as one of the sages. Okay, so we cleared what is idolatry. Idolatry is a belief that supreme being, God, Lord of the universe, has a partner. Somebody who is equal to him. Somebody else who is worthy of worship. That is forbidden. That is bad. The second forbidden practice is divination. Now, we need to define divination. What is divination? It is attempt to predict predestined future through means of invoking spirits. That is divination. And it is forbidden. And we have to explain why it is forbidden. To keep things short, it is forbidden because it's a form of trickery, either by the spirits invoked or by the sorcerer who is invoking them. It's a flaw and a trickery by default. And I'm gonna explain why. If there is such a thing as predestined future, then there is no free will. If there is no free will, you cannot be judged for anything. The entire concept of basically positive and negative action is absurd if everything is predetermined. And if you can divine that predetermined future, then it is predetermined and then there is no free will. And if there is no free will, then everything is allowed because everything is predetermined. That is really bad idea. Because if everything is predetermined, everything is fine. You can do whatever you want because it is predetermined. And that's a really bad way to see the world. Because if you don't have freedom of choice, you don't have responsibility. If you don't have responsibility, then there is nothing you are responsible for. You can do whatever you want. And that's a recipe for chaos. I am not saying that there are good and evil in absolute sense. But you have free will. Your actions determine your future. There is no such a thing as predestined future you can divine. So if spirit convinces you that he knows the future, he is lying. And if you convince yourself that you know the future, you are lying. Therefore, if you are trying to predict predetermined future, you are either lied to or you lie. There is no option in the middle. So that's why Torah bans it. Because it's trickery. It's lie. It's either spirit lying or you lying. That's why you go to 50 tarot readers and everyone predicts you a different thing. You know why? Because every fucking tarot reader has different spirits who tell him different shit. And every spirit is fucking guessing. Nobody fucking knows what's happening. And the only thing which really happens when you go to tarot reader or to any fortune teller is you are increasing the influence of spirits you don't know on you. I realized this, and this is why I fucking stopped doing divination at all. I don't prophesize for people. I don't channel about the future for people. I don't do any form of divination because I realized through my experience and trial and error that any attempt to divine predetermined future is flawed. It's logically flawed. Because if there is predetermined future, then fuck it. You know? Then nothing makes sense. And this is why Torah bans it, because trickery by default. What Torah also bans is basically baneful magic without being authorized, and poisons. Obviously, the reason why it's banned is pretty simple. Baneful magic is a murder attempt. If you do it without invoking any divine authority, you don't allow external forces to actually judge, is it okay for you to attempt that murder? And obviously, I don't have to be expert to tell you why that shit is forbidden. Those are three things which are explicitly forbidden in Old Testament. Idolatry, I explained why, because it violates the first commandment. What is also forbidden is unauthorized baneful magic, and what is also forbidden is divination. All other forms of magic are basically allowed. You want to call a demon by the power of the divine names to heal your neighbor? Fine. You want to call a demon to, by the power of divine names, help you study for exam? Fine. And by the way, according to Judaism, demons are morally neutral. They are not evil. Shadim are almost identical to the Jain and Muslim folklore. They are species of intelligent beings different from angels, to whom God, glory upon him, gave powers we don't possess. You are not allowed to worship them. You are not allowed to do unauthorized murder with them. You are not allowed to send them to possess people so you can rape them, which is what good portion of love magic is, you know? If you do a spell to make somebody like you, to make yourself more likable, that's fine. But if you send a fucking demon to possess somebody so you can fuck them, at the moment you are fucking them, they are possessed, Jesus Christ. It's not even them you are fucking. You are fucking a demon within a person, okay? I don't have to explain why is that wrong. The reason why I am so angry in this video is because I get this question all the time. And people don't read anything. And people don't know that there are thousands and thousands of books on Jewish magic written by rabbis who were Jews and who did magic and called demons by the power of the divine names, and nobody killed them ever. Of course, they never engaged in the practices I listed: unauthorized murder, sending demons to possess a person so they can fucking rape them, and divining predestined future. Those are things which they never engaged in. And if they did engage in that, they were basically considered not okay. Of course, conjuring angels to do stuff is definitely allowed. That's not questionable at all. Invoking energies of planets to do something for you is allowed. You know, you want to invoke the energy of Mars to achieve particular result. Yeah, allowed. A lot of Jewish grimoires on the goddamn thing. And of course, if you want to use just divine names to manifest something, then it's also allowed. That's actually recommended. You know, using divine names. There is an entire literature in the Jewish scripture basically teaching you how to extract divine names from the Bible verses. Okay. So, to keep this video really short, there is such a thing in Jewish magic. And as long as you don't do unauthorized murder and rape, you can call any spirit you like by the power of the divine names. You can ask him to do whatever you want to do. That is completely permissible if you don't steal, murder, or rape with that. That's it. And yeah, you know, that's the end of the video. That's the end of the video. I have nothing else to say. And that's it. I mean, if you don't like what I said, if you think I'm crazy, fine. Unsubscribe. If you want more content like this, subscribe. I am sorry. I am really sorry that I had to yell. But because I became so angry, because I was asked this question over and over, I just flipped in this clip. Because I had this debate many, many times, you know. And for all of the people who don't use divine names when they call spirits, I'm just saying, like, you are missing out. You are unnecessarily risking your life and well-being by not using divine names. Okay, and now I'm gonna explain the divine names from a Hebrew point of view. In the next video, I'm gonna do it more from a Muslim point. I am now a Muslim, I am not a Jew, but I'm gonna talk, okay? Now, I am not an expert in the field, but, you know, I never claimed to be an expert. Therefore, I am allowed to be wrong. I am allowed to be wrong. And if I am wrong, I am. I'm gonna admit my mistake. If somebody like presents me undeniable evidence, which I didn't address already in this video, I will be willing to accept it. I will be willing to change my mind. But now I'm gonna talk about divine names. So there is a lot of misconceptions on God in the occult community. There is a lot of misconceptions on God of the Old Testament and God of the Quran. I am not going to address New Testament because that book is simply too absurd to be addressed. It's not worthy of my time. If I wanted to list every contradiction within Christianity, it would legitimately take me 10 hours. So I'm going to skip New Testament in its entirety. I am just going to skip it. I am not going to comment on New Testament or anything related to that. Okay? I am just going to comment on the Old Testament and the divine names there and the God there. Okay. So let's talk about what is God of the Old Testament. It is not a spirit. There is nothing anthropomorphic about God of the Old Testament. And it cannot be spoken directly to. God can be spoken directly only by prophets. Only by people who dedicated their lives to that. And number of prophets in the Old Testament is limited. Therefore, in Judaism, God is so distant and transcendental that you cannot even speak to him. So, all of those Christian denominations who claim that they spoke to God. I spoke to God yesterday and he told me this and he told me that and he will fucking destroy you because you are a witch. God told me. All nonsense. You can't speak to God in Judaism. You can't speak to God in Islam. God is not a voice in your head you have a communication with. I just want to make it clear. And also, God gave you free will. So, God doesn't forbid you from doing anything. But he gave you instruction manual on what you should and shouldn't do. Okay? God kind of stated if you fuck too many people, you're gonna be internally empty and there is a big chance you're gonna get STD. Don't murder people, because if you murder people, you're gonna get fucked by other people or you're gonna be a psychopath. Don't steal, because stealing will create a chaotic society in which nobody will live properly. Don't abuse widows and the elderly, because if you abuse widows and the elderly, then basically you are creating a cruel society in which nobody wants to live in. If you express your homosexuality, you are kind of expressing it in a way in which it is not intended to be expressed, and it's not necessarily good for you. But God himself doesn't prevent you from doing anything. The idea that God doesn't want you to do anything is also stupid. God gave you free will. It means that you can do whatever you want to do. But not everything you can do is beneficial. So he gave you a list of things you should avoid. That's what Old Testament is. That's what Old Testament is. And Jesus, who was just a prophet and not God, didn't have an issue with the Old Testament. He had an issue with people applying it too harshly. Stoning women to death. Stoning homosexuals to death. Killing people. Imposing too much death penalty. Jesus opposed it. And Jesus also opposed a concept of earthly Messiah, which is a concept Jews still believe in. And I am not going to talk about why that concept is not a good concept, but that's... So what I'm telling you guys is, this entire occult community has like the idea that God is evil guy in the sky who stops you from doing stuff. God is not evil guy in the sky. And if anything talks to you in your head saying it's God of the Bible, dude, you are dealing with some jinn messing with your fucking head. God of the Old Testament speaks only to prophets. It doesn't speak in people's heads. And when God shows up, it's terrifying. People die. So the voice you hear in your head telling you it's evil God of the Bible is you having some fucker messing with your head, okay? God is source of all creation, and divine names are energies coming from that source. Adonai, energy of kingship. El Shaddai, different energy. Elohim, different energy. And so, God of the Bible is basically identical to the concept of Brahman in Hinduism. Universal consciousness, universal force. Identical to the concept of Sikh universal consciousness. And God of the Bible, which is universal consciousness, is the same as Allah in Islam. Okay? It's the same thing. It's not talking about guy in the sky who has a chair and ass. It's talking about consciousness. And it's giving you a set of recommendations to follow if you don't want to get fucked. You are free to do whatever you want to do. You have freedom. God gave you freedom. You are free. There is no destiny. Nothing is predetermined. You are free, and that's the point of you being created. You are fucking free. You have fucking freedom. Okay. So when you use divine names, you are essentially asking God to help you whatever you are trying to do with spirits. You are giving, actually jinns, because spirit is a pagan concept. Whatever you are trying to do with jinns, if you are using divine names, you are calling for energy assistance of the source itself. And it works. You know, I give divine names to people of Hindu background, Muslim background, Christian background. They tap into energies which have nothing to do with any religious interpretation of any denomination. When you say the name Adonai, you are objectively tapping into energy. When you say the name El Shaddai, you are objectively tapping into energy. When you say the names of Allah, you are objectively tapping into energy. Okay? Those are objective energies of the source. The God of the Bible is not any anthropomorphic entity. It's a source of all consciousness and all creation. It can't speak to you in your head. Okay? Unfortunately, there is a lot of delusional people, religious people, who think it is possible. And they usually advocate for really stupid things and create discord in society because basically they have messianic complex and they are convinced they are prophets, which is a really bad idea because people who are convinced they are prophets basically lost all moral compass pretty quickly, usually in society. You know, Muhammad was the last prophet. After Muhammad, officially there cannot be no prophets anymore because the heaven is basically sealed. There will be no prophets. The Muhammad was last one. And if you read any of the scriptures which came after Muhammad came, it's pretty much saying a lot of the things Muhammad said, just a little bit differently. Basically, they were just mystics. There is nothing prophetic about what they proclaimed. Unfortunately, because of the certain not so intelligent individuals, Quran is really misinterpreted. So I am not gonna tackle every single misinterpretation, but I just want to say that at the end of this video, my main message to you guys is you can do magic if you use divine names, if you don't swindle people with predestined future, if you don't do unauthorized murder and rape. That's fine. Magic itself isn't wrong, especially if you use divine names. If you don't use divine names, you are calling spirits you don't see without assistance of the source, which is really bad idea. If we simply in this community use the divine names and prayed and basically established our connection with the source, the amount of people who go crazy from occult practices would drastically drop. One of the main reasons people go crazy from occultism is because summoning darker jinn takes a lot of energy. People spend a lot of energy without replenishing, without praying, without meditating on the divine names, without fasting, without exercising, without reconnecting with the source of the creation. Who is Adonai? Who is Allah? Who is El Shaddai? You know, they disregard the source and they just work with those jinn and they spend a lot of energy to summon them and they flip. They go insane. They break down. If we simply use divine names to have that connection, we as a community would, I think, be in a much better place. In this community, prayer is demonized. Divine names are demonized. When I say demonized, I mean when you say people that you pray and you use divine names and you think Muhammad was the last prophet and you think that praying to God is not against occultism, people want to crucify you. People want to kill you. People ask for your blood. You know, I had endless discussions attempting to say to people, since I started praying, I have much more energy. My evocations are much more effective. Prayer actually enhances your magical workings. It replenishes you. It makes everything safer. When you use divine names, when you pray, you open a completely new horizon. God is source of all knowledge, including magical knowledge. I have never managed to make a point in those discussions. I have never managed to convince somebody who is clearly going insane because they work with dark gin too much and they are spending too much energy and they are breaking down mentally. I usually can't convince them that the reason why they are breaking down mentally is because they work too much with those dark gin without replenishing. And so they are going crazy because their aura is simply collapsing under the pressure. Okay. That's it. And the last thing I want to say is, if you don't want to use divine names, if you don't want to pray, you are risking a lot because you have no effective way to reconnect with the source. Meditation on its own is basically not enough. Because what meditation simply does is it helps you absorb energy from the world around you, but the world around you isn't source. You know, the world around you is simply world around you. That's why a lot of people who meditate, they kind of sit with their eyes closed and they don't go anywhere. You know, they don't feel replenished because they are just working with energy which is around them, whatever that energy is. And that is everything I have to say for today. If you use divine names in your magic, if you invoke authority of God, if you don't do any divination, swindling, unauthorized murder or rape, if you don't do any idolatry, if you don't think that there are multiple gods equal to each other, magic is fine, according to Judaism, and mostly according to Islam, if we don't talk about one specific denomination of Islam, which I don't have a time to argue against right now. And Muslim esoteric literature is one of the reasons I converted to Islam, because those guys went into such a depth on everything, and that it was blowing my mind. It was explaining every single experience I had. It was explaining every single encounter I had. It was in great detail explaining how those beings behave. All of the explanations corresponded to my experience. And that's it. Talk to you soon.